Hello everyone, and welcome to ProSpend EDGE. I'm True from ProSpend, and I'll be your moderator today. So thank you for joining us for this session of Stop Unplanned Budget Bleed, why Australian and New Zealand CFOs call POs their gold standard. If you're a CFO or finance leader at the mid-market company who's ever been hit with a surprise invoice, or if you've struggled to keep spending in check without stifling your team's agility, you're at the right place. So just before we dive in, we'll have some housekeeping. We have a few polls throughout the webinar, so they're there as thought provokers, and we do want to get a gauge on how you guys feel as an audience. We also encourage questions throughout the webinar, so just add them into the Q&A box and we'll strive to answer them as we go along. So we have 3 expert speakers with us today who will shed some light on why POs are so critical for proactive spend management and how to implement them without the usual headaches. Before I introduce them, let's quickly set the scene. Imagine starting your week with a stack of invoices on your desk for things you didn't even know were ordered. You're scrambling to find out who approved these, if anyone did. Sound familiar? We've heard this story from many finance teams. It's like herding cats, chasing down details after the money is already spent. And today, we're going to show you a better way. So first, let me introduce our panel. With us today, we have Michael Williamson, who's the Associate Director of Financial Services and Transformation at Monash College.
Thanks, Drew. As Drew mentioned, Associate Director at Monash College, we went on a journey over the last 2 years, a full-scale finance system transformation, and we selected ProSpend as our purchase order system.
Cool. Thanks, Michael. We also have Nilpa Shah-Smith, a finance manager from Wolga as well.
Thanks, Drew. Hi, everyone. Welcome to this session. I'm Nilpa. I'm the finance manager at Wolga. And similar to Michael's journey, Wolga started a tech transformation journey 2-3 years ago, and implementing a purchase ordering system was one of the key transformations where we chose ProSpend.
Cool. And finally, Sharon Nouh, who's the CEO and founder of ProSpend.
Good morning, everybody. Really pleased to be in this webinar. Purchase orders are my favourite subject to talk about with spend management because they are truly proactive, pre-approving spend before it happens. It's the gold standard.
Thanks, Sharon. And finally, I'll be here as your moderator, and so we'll save some time at the end for your questions. So let's dive in. Michael, I want to start with you. Can you paint us a picture of what happens when a company operates without a good purchase order process? Why is it such a problem?
Absolutely. Thanks, Drew. So over my career, I've worked in organisations with annual supplier spend from hundreds of thousands of dollars through to over $1 billion. I've experienced organisations with no purchase order process through to best practice purchasing in organisations who have transitioned within that scale, including my own. So I want everyone to consider this very possible scenario. The CFO has collected the quarterly forecast from the finance team and has presented it to the CEO and board. Forecast and year-to-date spend is tracking to budget. The next day, an unexpected invoice hits the accounts payable inbox, $150K from a software supplier. It turns out Steve in IT had a coffee machine conversation with the CEO 6 months ago, who rather flippantly said he believes staff should have the right tools to do their job, which might sound familiar to some of you. Steve took that statement as approval to go ahead and purchase all company staff Pro PDF software for the next 3 years with payment in advance instead of what they were already using. Steve forgot to mention this to the finance team when they asked about the upcoming forecast. The next forecast, the CFO's message will change, not tracking to budget, overspent. In this scenario, the CFO now looks like he doesn't know what's going on in the business. The accounts payable staff member is trying to find out who ordered this, who approved it, and who can confirm the invoice for payment, knowing that auditors are going to ask for these records. If there's a contracts manager, they'll be trying to get hold of a signed contract for the contract register. And the head of IT, Jane, is now working on damage control and a plan to fund early termination charges to cease the now signed contract without too much impact to business reputation. There's a number of issues in these scenarios. There's wasted staff time being an obvious issue. Did Steve have the financial and signing delegations to do this? And what if Jane was already working on another contract with a different supplier for provision of similar services? This scenario could have been avoided with a purchase order process. A purchase order is much more than just a document. It's how an organisation ensures compliance, accountability, and control. From my experience, smart organisations use POs to plan, not just to pay. So every time there's spend without a PO, you're introducing risk and a little bit of expensive chaos. Thanks, Drew.
Thank you, Michael. That really sets the scene. So let me quantify this chaos that Michael's describing. So research shows that in companies without strong spend controls, up to 80% of invoices can be from average spend. So meaning purchases made outside the proper processes without POs. And how about this? 1 in 4 invoices will have some issue that flags it for manual intervention. If you think about it, industry benchmarks puts the average invoice exception rate around 25%. So Nilpa, we're going to lean on you now. From the lens of a finance manager, what do those stats mean for mid-sized businesses?
Hey everyone. Yeah, 80%. Sounds scary at first, but that is the reality of invoices when there's no purchase orders. So for the finance team, this can create all kinds of problems, especially when surprise invoices come through and the effort that we require, to track down the approvers, who's the budget owner, and so on. So it sort of slows everything down, just leaves room for errors and slippage. And the fact that 25% invoices require manual intervention, that is a massive drain on time. So, in a non-PO environment, every time these sort of exceptions come up, it's a mini detective case sort of for your finance team. Who actually approved this? Is this an existing supplier or is it a new vendor? If it's a new vendor, have they gone through the right process? Completed the checks, invoices from last financial year, missed accruing for it. There's impacts on audit, things like that. So I guess without a PO, you are sort of starting from scratch every time, and so the invoices I drew.
Oh, fantastic. Thank you, Michael and Nilpa, for really bringing these stats to life with your experience. And it's a great segue to run into our first 2 polls. So the first question is, how would you describe your company's current purchase order process? And the second, how often do you see these surprise invoices at your organizations? So with bills with no prior purchase orders or approvals. So there are 2 questions. You can slide down to see both. I'll give you guys a few seconds to answer those. Two more seconds. Okay. There's a lot of polls being answered right now. Okay, I'll just end the poll. So I'll share the results. So it seems that most people don't really use purchase orders in their processes, which is great. So that's why you're here for this webinar. And it seems that surprise invoices are a common thing across all businesses here today. Okay, perfect. Now, Michael, what are some key implications for businesses operating without purchase orders?
Yeah, sure. So Nilpa touched on some of these. We can see on screen 4 clear implications, but let's classify them into 2 broad categories: risk and cost savings. So if you're operating without POs and the associated processes, you are carrying risk. Risk that you're overpaying suppliers due to mistakes, risk of paying fraudulent invoices. I'm sure everyone's seen it more and more of this in the news lately. Risk of non-compliance with policies, delegations, and there's also risk of reputational damage from delayed or disputed payments. Now, also without POs, you are missing out on potential savings, missed opportunities to control costs, to leverage supplier pricing and consolidate spend, There's increased time and administrative effort to chase invoices and approvals. There's also that reduced visibility that prevents effective forecasting and analysis and the strategic decision making that needs to occur. Thanks, True. True, you're on mute.
Thank you, Michael. Thank you for that. So it does really hit home to see why these are pain points. So Sharon, I want to bring you in next. Given all these issues, why on earth would any company not implement purchase orders? I know a lot of mid-market companies push back on POs, and we've heard the excuses. Can you talk about those myths and whether they still hold water?
Absolutely. So I did want to just use Michael's tagline, which I love, and I hope you'll allow us to use it in some of our collateral, Michael. Smart organisations use POs to plan, not just to pay. So I love that. But look, the myth of why companies don't use purchase orders. This slide is really dear to my heart, and speaks to the reason why at ProSpend we decided to build a PO module. After building our invoice automation module, the natural next step was let's build a PO module. And the reason why we did that was because we had spoken to a lot of CFOs who absolutely wanted to bring in POs into their organisation because they know, and everybody in the finance team know that it is the gold standard. It is the best proactive way to manage spend. But unfortunately, every time they would bring this discussion up with their organisation, there was always these reasons for pushing back. And so that's what we decided to do, was that we wanted to build a product that would pretty much bust these myths about why we shouldn't be introducing POs. Myth one, we're too small for that red tape. Look, as a business grows, you will find that POs will be a godsend. But if you start even as a small company, having POs in, it's the norm. People know that that is the process. And then as you grow, that norm then means that you are growing well and you're scaling well. So you might only have one department initially, but as you get multiple departments and multiple teams, having POs in as a normal standard is then a good next step. And POs now are built for small companies. They don't have to be these big legacy ERP modules that are around. The second myth is POs will slow us down, right? Absolutely do not slow you down anymore. POs should be on a mobile. Everybody's using mobiles, so that's how people like to work. So if you can put POs on a mobile, users can now create a PO on a mobile in under a minute, or they can still do it on their desktop if they like. It can then be approved also within a minute, because the approver also has the ability to approve on a mobile. So it absolutely doesn't slow the process down. But the deep truth is that if you skip that PO step, the flow-on effect is actually what does slow a business down. It's all of the finance team having to chase invoice approvals, missing budget alignment, reconciling unknown spend. So what actually slows you down is not having POs, if you'd like to look at it that way. The third myth is, our managers, they keep their spend under control. And of course they do. That's part of their responsibility, is that they all sit at the start of the financial year and work out their budgets. And that's, what they're trying to lock in. But part of their responsibility is keeping that spend within budget, right? And that's where the difficulty comes if you don't have POs in, is that you are then making it more difficult for them to actually keep their spend within control. If you introduce POs, then you're giving them the tool to be able to keep their budget within alignment. So controlling spend actually becomes easy, it's not difficult, and it's proactive. So they're actually controlling the spend before their budget is blown. And the myth number 4 is my favourite. We hear this all the time. We've tried ERP PO modules, they just don't work for us. And I know Nilpa is going to talk a bit about her experience with this, and that's absolutely correct. POs that are clunky, that are part of an ERP system, really they don't work. And that is one of the main reasons why we decided to build a PO module that companies could adopt, and it was easy to be able to use. So often the barrier isn't the concept of a PO, it's simply that there is bad PO platforms out there. But using a right-sized PO platform that don't look like a huge procurement system, they're on the mobile, they're light, they're fast, that's the type of product that is now available.
Thank you, Sharon. So let's put those myths to a test and we'll run our third poll. What's your biggest concern or obligation your team has about implementing purchase orders? Is it too much admin and paperwork? Is it slowing down your purchasing? Do you think you're too small for purchase orders? Or have you tried it and it hasn't worked? Or is it just not currently a priority with you? So I'll give you guys some time to answer those questions, those polls. It seems like there's 3 very common answers between everyone so far. We'll touch into that. Give you guys a couple more seconds. People answering. Okay, answering has slowed down, so I'll share the results now. So it seems for most people that it's too much admin and paperwork, which, as Sharon's touched on, can be solved. Slowing down your purchasing, like Sharon said, it does actually speed it up if you have the visibility on knowing what you're spending on prior to that. And then there's the too small for purchase orders to matter. They've tried it before and it didn't work. And it's not a priority right now. So thank you everyone for sharing your answers. So myth busting aside, let's assume a company says, okay, fine, POs make sense, but we've tried it in our ERP and it's failed. So that leads us to the next part. What are the modern options? And I know Nilpa, you can speak on that experience. Could you share what happened to you at Wolga, with the ERP PO attempt and what you've learned?
Sure. So we have explored using the PO module within our existing ERP. And it may work for some, but I guess some of the issues that we faced were user access. It does need to create a PO. They would have needed a license assigned, so we might have to limit licenses because we don't want to spend on that. Or you could have people emailing our finance team to jump in and raise purchase orders for users, which is not practical and pretty much taking away accountability. Secondly, the ERP interface, it's built for us, the finance team. It's not really built for the average employees. So I guess in terms of purchase orders, we're looking for something that's sort of user-friendly. Anyone can jump in, raise a purchase order, and so that we can get that adoption rate going up in the organization. And another key thing would be we need something that integrates with our existing ERP, so we don't have to spend additional money on building on custom development, so that it can integrate. Third thing I'd say would be sort of workflow and budget visibility. So the ERP can generate a PO, and you can build workflows, but they're not that simple. Whereas sort of with ProSpend, the way the workflow approvals work, there's a lot of visibility, and it can go through all the right people based on their approval limits. Because sometimes we do require multiple approvals, based on the amount of the purchase order. And also, if the budget for that category is coming close to being used up or they've exceeded, we do need the system to flag that for our users. So we're being proactive. So I guess our takeaway was that people don't hate the idea of raising purchase orders. They just need it to be efficient, simple to use, not taking up a lot of time in their day. And I guess communicating the benefits of raising the purchase order up front and using the system, they like to be kept informed. So that was our key takeaway in terms of using. Thank you.
Thank you, Nilpa, for sharing that story. So it sounds like technology or the wrong choice of it was a big culprit here. I just also want to let everyone know that the Q&A is open again. Sorry, I just noticed it wasn't working based on the chat. So you guys can submit your Q&As now. Okay, so we've covered the problems and misconceptions. Michael, I'd like to circle back with you to quantify something. What's the real cost of continuing without POs? You gave us some already, but maybe let's bullet point the cost for those still unconvinced.
Yeah, sure. Okay, I'm going to keep this relatively brief to give Sharon enough time to go through the roadmap. So you can and you should quantify the costs for your own operations. We certainly did, and we got some surprising results, and it actually helped us justify the ROI of putting in a purchasing system was really clear, or putting in a new purchasing system in our case. So operational costs. Introducing POs with automation, it drives measurable efficiency gains across finance operations. The cost of standard procure-to-pay processes falls, and error handling falls as well. You're always going to have issues on your invoices. So take, for example, a supplier billing for 10 items when only 5 were delivered. A PO system flags that straight away, especially one like ProSpend that's automatically scanning invoices. So it flags those discrepancies immediately, and you remove the risk of letting them slip through unnoticed. Opportunity costs I want to touch on. So without the visibility of orders and upcoming payments, your cash flow forecasting suffers. So POs can improve that dramatically and help with better planning, understanding the more accurate timing of payments to help maximize interest and investment returns, which is what we do now. They also there's also the risk of reduced risk of damaged supplier relationships from late payments. We've seen in the past invoices come through, as Nilpa mentioned, that were from the prior year. But now that we've got a good solid PO system in place, we know what to expect. We can follow up with the business. Have you received an invoice? If they haven't emailed it through to finance automatically. There's also a missed opportunity in procurement analytics. So PO system gives you structured data from all these POs, how much everyone's planning to buy. We do a lot of standing orders as well. So we know over the entire year what people are planning to order or what is set out in certain contracts as well. So when we see that, we can bring all that together and we can start to consolidate. Are people buying the same things from different suppliers? Fraud risk is really important, and it's a wildcard cost, potentially one of the most expensive if, unfortunately, something might happen to your business. So without the checks and approvals that are built into PO processes, your organization can expose itself to fraudulent or duplicate invoices that can cost so much more. So much more. Audit and compliant costs. So we at Monash College, for example, we undergo a controls audit, which informs how detailed the finance audit, the year-end audit is. If the controls aren't there, then the finance audit takes a lot longer and is a lot more expensive. So having good controls through PO processes in a system can actually reduce audit costs as well. And the audit trail around all the approvals means providing information through to auditors is really, really easy. we actually gave our auditors just access to ProSpend as an audit user, so they can see what they need to see. Ethical and reputational costs. Not something that everyone thinks of, but uncontrolled maverick spend means that you might be engaging suppliers whose practices don't align with your company's ethics or sustainability commitments. So in today's market, brand integrity and social responsibility are inseparable. Consumers and partners are watching very, very closely. So without using POs, you're trying to save pennies, maybe efficiencies in getting an order out there, although Sharon mentioned that is a myth. But trying to save pennies and losing pounds, the downstream costs and risks, especially operational, financial, reputational, far outweigh any perceived short-term savings.
Thank you, Michael. So like once a dollar amount is attached, it just hits different when you guys know what's there. Cool. So let's run now into our fourth poll on the PO process health check. So is the following happening at your company? Is it high invoice exception rates? Is it after the fact approvals you guys are seeing? Or missing documentation? Are your suppliers often chasing late payments because you guys just don't have that visibility? Or is it all of the above? What are you guys experiencing at your company? We're getting a lot of after the fact approvals, which is really interesting. Which makes sense. If you don't have that visibility prior, then you're not going to know what happens. Give you guys a few more seconds to answer the poll. Okay. Okay, I'll share the results now. So it seems like, yeah, consistently across the board, after the fact approvals is occurring in a lot of businesses and missing documentation. And for 22%, you guys are experiencing all of the above, which is not great if you guys think about how much money you guys are losing. So okay, assuming everyone is now on board for, yes, we need some POs. The next question is, how do you do this right? So Sharon, can you give us a practical guide, especially for a mid-market company that doesn't have a huge procurement depth? How do they implement a modern PO process successfully?
Thanks, True. I would recommend a bit of a sales pitch, I suppose, initially to the company, and it can be a very short bullet point email to say we want to give you a great tool to be able to help you in your business. It's a tool that we can give you on your mobile and give you control. And we'll be launching this, as part of our our best practice spend management. But before that, obviously, map the process today. Who can spend, who's got a spend limit, who approves, and how do invoices show up. So sit and just define the current process, but also I think define the best practice process, because what you don't want to be doing is trying to just replicate what you're currently doing. You're trying to put in a process that is better than what you're currently doing. I would also recommend keep the policy simple at the start. And it can be a simple, if you're going to spend more than $500, you need to raise a PO. And, then you can put in, if it's at $500 to, $2,000, it needs to be a second level approval. So it can be quite simple, as a starting point. You would have a few exceptions. If it's under $500 and it's this, you don't need a PO. And then I think you would need to then say in your policy, if it's over $500 and there's no PO, then there is a no pay. So that is our policy going forward, and here's how to raise one. Obviously, pick a tool. There are a few tools out there. Pick a tool that is going to be very easy for your people to adopt. As I said, everybody wants to work and likes to work on the mobile phone. So, that I think is a kind of a must-have. You people must be able to raise a purchase order on a mobile. Ideally, if you can have budgets available to your users at the time they're raising a PO, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about that later, then that is great. And also, of course, make sure that the tool will integrate very easily with your ERP system. And so that's, those are sort of some of the must-haves when you're picking a tool. Maybe roll it out to one department, initially. Let them have a run with it for about 4 weeks. Get some feedback from them, what worked well, what didn't work well. Watch where you need to make a few tweaks. Share that win to the rest of the team, and then roll it out across the organisation. And obviously then go, measure and celebrate it. In a product like ProSpend, you can actually then start to track, how quickly your invoice processing is coming down. So it's pretty easy to track the benefits. That's sort of, a fairly easy roadmap. Baseline, what's our baseline? Put in a simple policy, pick the right tool, do a bit of a pilot, and then roll it out, and then go back and measure and improve it as you go.
Fantastic, Sharon. That's extremely actionable. Thank you. So I hope everyone's taking some notes. If you haven't, we will be sharing a checklist after the webinar to help guide you through these steps. So now, Nilpa, I want to loop you back in to talk about something you've touched on, AP automation versus a proactive spend management. You've had some invoice automation, but still had issues until POs were added. Can you elaborate on that transition and the difference it made for you?
Sure. So when you layer in a purchase order system, for example, ProSpend, that's when the magic happens for us. So suddenly we had pre-approval, which means, invoices cannot be paid without a matching approved purchase order, unless that vendor is on an exception list where, you sometimes have recurring expenditure where there's generally like a signed agreement, and so that's okay, which would be very minor exceptions. You can also catch exceptions before the money is spent. The system also flagged when teams are trying to raise a purchase order where they've already exhausted the budget. In these cases, you want to make sure that all the right people at the top are across it, they've approved it, or maybe some budget realignment can happen, or we could just cancel that purchase early. And I guess less surprises for managers, and just approvals becoming smoother. So I guess adding purchase orders, it actually helped us start to control that spend and avoid any sort of nasty surprises.
That's great, Nilpa. I couldn't agree with you more. So let's dive into our next two polls. What system or method does your company currently use for POs? And which benefit of a structured PO process is most important to you? So is it a built-in ERP or accounting software PO module? Is it the manual process, specialized software, having no formal system, or you're just not sure? The benefit of a structured PO process that's important to you is a budget control and visibility. having faster approval and payments, fewer errors or duplicates, preventing fraud, or improved compliance and the audit readiness. I'll give you guys a few more seconds. There are quite a few people answering the poll still. Two more seconds. Oh, I'll share the results now. So it seems that either that most people don't use any formal system or that they're using the built-in ERP accounting software module, PO module. And what benefit of a structured PO process is most important is better budget control and visibility and faster approval payments. Ooh, I'm surprised preventing fraud is not up there as well. Ooh, okay. So let's talk about the solutions. So we have mentioned ProSpend a few times, and Sharon, since ProSpend is a platform specifically for this, can you give us a quick overview of how it helps and maybe what sets it apart for our region, so that Australian and New Zealand mid-market?
Sure. So without being obviously too salesy about ProSpend, but if you're looking to bring in purchase orders, and it is a cultural shift within your organisation, then you need to be able to cover off and be able to explain why this will be simple, why it'll be easy to use, and really what are the benefits. And the benefits down to, the end users and also to your managers. And so it's not just, a benefit for your finance team. Of course, they will get massive amounts of benefit. But what are the benefits for your end users and your managers? So obviously for an end user, man, it has to be simple. I've got to be able to do it on the phone, and it's got to be quick, and I've got to get approval quickly, right? So you've got to be able to demonstrate that the product you're going to bring in is going to be very user-friendly for your users. Very simple PO creation. Even on a mobile, you can take a photo of a quote, or you can even be capturing a photo of the product that you're buying, which is capturing. Then that's what we want to buy. So simple PO creation is a must. Custom approval workflows. Every organisation has different types of approvals that they have around managing spend. So you do want a platform then that can have different types of approval workflows that you can layer into this. So it may be, under $500, one line of approval. If it's, 500 to 2,000, then it needs to be second level approval, or it could be, down to, it's got to be approval by a project level. There are all sorts of configurations that you should be able to put into, launching purchase orders. Another sort of easy approval workflow you can put in with purchase orders is that if a purchase order is approved and then the invoice comes in and it matches, then you could actually have it auto approve straight through to your ERP. The spend was already approved. It matched the invoice, so you are not then slowing down the process on having that invoice paid. Or the other option is you could also then say, okay, the PO was raised, it matched the invoice, but I still want the purchase order creator to be in the loop. And so you can have an auto then to the purchase order creator say, yep, see the invoices come in, the goods came in, I'll approve it, and then it goes straight through to your ERP or to your finance team. So, having the ability in a platform to be able to build these customer approval workflows is really key. Real-time budget visibility. This is something that is dear to my heart. Purchase orders is the way to go, but what you can now do is and I'm going to be a bit salesy here, in a product like ProSpend, you can actually have your budgets displaying at the time a purchase order is created. So this is an absolute such a benefit for your people out there. Everybody has a budget and they've agreed on the budget, but where is that budget, right? People don't see it past it being signed off often. But if you can have the budget swiping across at the time that the person is actually creating a purchase order, they know they're good to go. It's a product I need to buy, it's within budget, and then the approver can also then approve that purchase order, and away we go. It prevents the overspending right at the outset. So that's a real useful thing if you can incorporate budgets at the same time as you're bringing in purchase orders. That's a good tip. 3 are matching of fraud checks. You do want to be able to match it, do it automatically when the PO comes in and the invoice comes in. But one of the things I wanted to talk about a lot is fraud checks. Most CFOs out there today are very, very concerned about fraudulent invoices coming in. And there is a lot of sort of tools to be able to, say, yes, it's a fraud invoice or it's not a fraud invoice. And, is it a duplicate? All of that noise about fraudulent invoices instantly goes out the window if you are matching that with a PO. It's done. It's safe. That invoice is true. It's matched with the PO, and there's your fraud control instantly. The ability to raise recurring and blanket POs is also useful because you might have one large spend at the start of the year, and you then want those invoices to come through and be deducting against that recurring or that one blanket PO. That's a handy thing to have. And of course, it goes without saying, it's got to integrate to your finance system. It's got to be able to push that data through seamlessly. Local support also is helpful when you're choosing a platform. So that's what I would highly recommend when you're looking at a tool.
Perfect. Thank you, Sharon. So the discussions have been fantastic and we've covered a lot. So just before we go into our final poll, I just wanted to go to Michael, Nilpa, and Sharon one last time and ask, for businesses out there looking to make a change and stop unplanned budget bleed internally, what advice would you give them? Do you want to go first, Michael?
Yeah, sure. I would recommend getting your foundations right. So your purchasing frameworks, your governance. Then if you don't have the tool that supports these, invest. So that's your purchasing system. The risk reduction alone will justify the investment, but you will see those operational efficiencies and opportunities as well that I discussed earlier. Don't forget the behavioral change element of putting in one of these systems. And strong change management might be required. I really recommend working with your suppliers to support the change. So bring them along on the journey. Let them know that they'll be required to quote the PO number on every invoice if you're going to push for no PO, no pay. If they don't have one, then if they don't have a PO number, then they aren't getting paid or there will be a delay. It'll make their payment much easier and faster because it does. It makes the payment process so much faster. That way, the next time someone in your organization calls them up and says, hey, I want to purchase this, and they haven't gone through your PO process, the supplier will actually push back on them and say, can you give me a PO number so that I can get paid? So I do recommend work with your suppliers. They can be a great advocate for change.
Thank you, Michael. And Nilpa, do you have anything to share as well?
Yeah, no, really good points raised by Michael. I guess for us, some of my tips would be, don't hold back on implementing a purchase ordering system. Do as much UAT as possible on the different scenarios, that you could come across, so that you can automate the process end to end. Our goal was to let the system do most of the legwork. We wanted minimal manual intervention, so it might take a little bit longer to go live, but I think it's key to do those, that as much UAT as possible, and that tool then free up your fine.
Thank you, Nilpa. Sharon, do you have any last tips to give to everybody as well?
I think that probably the last tip is that, as Michael said, there is a change management process. It is a cultural shift, definitely. But I think if you can, try to make your staff feel that, this is not Big Brother. This is actually something that is going to help them control their spend, and make their lives easier and the rest of the company easier. Then I think if you can get that message across that, the bad old days of POs have gone. This is about introducing tools that we should all now be using as part of our day-to-day process.
Well, thank you, Sharon. So to summarize, what I'm hearing is change can be challenging. Habits must be adjusted and some investment is needed to be made. But the payoff is a more predictable, efficient, and confident operation. So for Australian and New Zealand mid-market businesses in particular, our panelists have proven that embracing POs and proactive spend management can become a source of competitive advantage. So by eliminating waste, preventing fraud, and avoiding budget surprises, businesses can safeguard their margins and reinvest their savings into growth. So here it is, our final poll of the day. What are your plans regarding purchase order processes at your company after this webinar? So we won't be sharing the results from this. This is just for ProSpend to know, and we just want to gauge where you guys are at in this process, especially after this webinar. So I'll give you guys a few moments to answer this as well. There's quite a lot of varied answers from everyone I can see so far. I'll just give you guys a few more seconds to answer the poll. 2 more seconds. Cool. Thank you, everybody. So we've covered a lot in our session today, and I believe Nilpa and Michael have gone through most of the questions that are in the Q&A box. So I'll just have to see if there's any that can be directed to Sharon. Let me just confirm. So Sharon, this is one for you. So can ProSpend cards also link to purchase orders?
ProSpend cards linked to purchase orders.
Yeah.
Currently, no. As in are we talking about the ProSpend virtual cards?
I believe so.
Right. Okay. So virtual cards are another sort of payment concept. How the purchased ProSpend cards can help with companies with pre-approval is that you can put in spend limits against those cards. So that is an option. If you are wanting to have people running around with cards in their pockets, then you can put in those limits. So it is another good option aside from using purchase orders.
Okay, thank you, Sharon. We have one. So this is to all of you guys, any advice that would help companies ease the transition for non-finance teams who are currently hesitant to use purchase orders? I think Anne Is there any tips from you, Michael? Or
Yes, absolutely. So, non-finance teams, we actually had a really big discussion about who should be raising purchase orders within the business. There's the idea that someone in finance or if you've got a purchasing team should be raising the purchase orders. So what we did was we actually did the analysis that says if that is to happen, your teams, and we're talking to the leaders within the business, will be wasting their time. In order to get the details into a purchasing system, someone's got to put them in. Someone has to. Who better to do that than the person who knows what they are buying? Now,
Spending the money.
exactly. And if it's someone in the finance team who's raising the purchase orders, they've got to get those details from that person anyway. So either someone in the business is going to be sending them an email, they're putting all the details in an email, which would take just as long or longer, or giving them a call when it's quicker to actually just have the users, the business out there raising the purchase orders. So we were able to sell that across our business to say it makes sense financially even, or from an efficiency perspective, for everyone else to be raising the orders.
I mean, you could even just reframe it as it's a sales order form.
Yeah.
It's not even a PO. It is a sales order form. It doesn't have to be sort of a PO. If you want to spend something, grab your mobile, create it, and get it approved. And then all of the rest of it will happen behind the scenes. They don't even have to get involved in that.
okay, thanks, guys. A few more questions. Let me just double check. Sorry, there's a lot of questions to go through. I'm just trying to see which ones to answer. So I think this one's for you, Sharon. So can you collate purchase order requests from different teams and employees into one purchase order?
Sorry, say that again, Sharon.
So can you collate purchase order requests from different teams or employees into one PO?
Different POs into, right.
Can you collect different requests collate requests from different teams or different employees within the business just into a single PO?
Right. Okay. No. What the best practice would be that let's say the marketing team is working on a conference and there's a budget for that conference, and there might be 4 or 5 different people within the marketing team who are actually spending money against that particular event. If you have the system set up to say, the budget for that event is $100,000. Everybody then can be raising different purchase orders, but it can be tagging it against that particular, event or project. And then they will all then roll into, the overall budget for that particular event. So we're not sort of combining them into one PO, but all of those various POs are all being tagged to that particular spend. And then when the invoice comes in, it is then deducting the different POs against, that particular invoice.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you guys for the Q&A. So thank you, everyone. So we've reached the end of our session, and I'd like to thank everyone for participating. So big thank you, especially to our expert panel. So thank you, Michael, Nilpa, and Sharon. I really appreciate your insights and sharing your journey with us. So following the conclusion of this webinar, we will send out a follow-up email that will include a handy PO implementation checklist for you to get started on your journey. And then a couple of days from now, there'll be a second email with the full recording of the webinar for you to watch back or share with your team. So finally, if you have any further questions regarding optimizing your PO processes, please reach out to us. We'll be happy to organize a personalized demo on the ProSpend modules if you're interested in exploring the solution in more depth. So thank you, everybody, and bye for now.
Thanks very much, True, and thanks very much, Michael and Nilpa, for joining us today. And can I just end with that wonderful quote, smart organisations use POs to plan, not just to pay.